there is a question that almost no one has the courage to ask. It is not how to get rich. It is not which investment gives the highest return. It is a much more uncomfortable question. What, inside of me, is keeping me away from wealth? Because the truth is simple, though difficult to accept, poverty is rarely external. It begins as an internal pattern, a mental habit, a way of reacting to life. Jim Rohn used to say that success is not something you pursue. It is something you attract by the person you become. And if wealth is not arriving, perhaps it is not because the world is against you, but because you are still aligned with old versions of yourself. The internal preparation. What keeps you away from wealth is not a lack of opportunity. The world is full of them. What keeps you away from wealth is the lack of internal preparation to recognize them, sustain them, and honor them. There are people who even get close to money. It knocks on the door, but they do not know how to receive it. Because inside, they still carry guilt, fear, disorganization, and immediacy. Wealth requires internal space. And many people live mentally overloaded with complaints, distractions, and excuses. The first major block is believing that wealth is luck. As long as you believe that, you place yourself as a spectator of your own life. And spectators never build a fortune. They only comment on the game. Wealth requires a posture. It requires responsibility. It requires assuming that if something is not working, the adjustment begins with you. As long as you blame the government, family, the past, or the economy, you give away your power. And whoever gives away their power also gives away their future. What you tolerate. What keeps you away from wealth is not what you don't have. It is what you tolerate. Tolerance for mediocrity. Tolerance for a lack of discipline. Tolerance for living below your potential. And every time you tolerate this, you teach the universe how to treat you. There is an invisible distance between desiring wealth and being prepared for it. That distance is filled by habits. And habits are born from beliefs. Many people say they want to prosper, but they live making small, fragile, and emotional decisions. They want long-term results with short-term behaviors. Jim Rohn taught that life improves when you improve. Not when you complain better. Not when you hope better. When you improve. Strategic patience and focus. One of the greatest saboteurs of wealth is the now mentality. The constant need for immediate pleasure. Those who cannot say no today will always say, I wish I had tomorrow. Wealth requires strategic patience. It requires planting without applause. It requires working while no one is watching. Another silent block is the habit of comparing oneself. Comparison steals focus. And focus is the fuel of prosperity. While you person has, you stop taking care of the ground that is yours. And abandoned ground never bears fruit. There is also the fear of growth. Few admit this, but growing requires abandoning old versions of yourself. It requires disappointing the expectations of others. It requires becoming someone not everyone will recognize. Many people prefer to remain small because small is comfortable. It is known. It is socially accepted. But wealth is not born from comfort. It is born from expansion. And every expansion starts uncomfortably. The invisible price. If you live postponing important decisions, fleeing from responsibilities, and negotiating with your own discipline, then you have already found one of the reasons that keeps you away from wealth. It is not a lack of talent. It is an excess of concessions to yourself. Every wealth has an invisible price. And no, it is not just effort. It is identity. You don't build a fortune just by changing what you do. You build a fortune by changing who you are when no one is watching. Jim Rohn used to say that success is something simple to do, but also simple not to do. And the majority chooses the path of daily non-action. What keeps you away from wealth might be something seemingly small. Lack of routine, lack of reading, lack of planning, lack of silence. Silence to think. Silence to decide. Silence to hear your own conscience. People poor in results live in constant noise. Others' opinions. Digital distractions. Empty conversations. Wealth is born in strategic silence, in daily reflection, in the honest analysis of mistakes, in the immediate correction of routes. Total responsibility. Another price few want to pay is total responsibility, assuming that no one will come to save you, that no one owes you anything, that the result of your life is a direct reflection of your repeated choices. While you wait for motivation, disciplined people are moving forward. While you wait for confidence, committed people are learning by doing. Wealth does not respect intention. It responds to consistent action. If you do not take care of your time, if you do not protect your energy, if you do not govern your habits, you are, without realizing it, financing your own scarcity. And the hardest thing to accept is, life does not punish. It only responds. The good news is that everything keeping you away from wealth can be adjusted. Nothing is broken. Nothing is lost. But the adjustment begins when you stop romanticizing the desire and start honoring the process. The construction of greatness. Wealth is not an event. It is a silent construction. Daily. Intentional. Jim Rohn reminded us that you don't need to do extraordinary things. Just do ordinary things in an extraordinarily consistent way. Adjust your mindset. Adjust your routine. Adjust your choices. Adjust the standard of what you accept as normal. When you raise your internal standards, life responds. When you become more disciplined, chaos diminishes. When you become more conscious, opportunities reveal themselves. Do not wait to feel ready. Readiness comes after the decision, after the action, after the commitment. Wealth begins when you decide to stop sabotaging yourself. When you decide to stop negotiating with your own greatness. When you understand that prospering is a duty to your potential. Perhaps today you do not have everything you desire. But if you assume total responsibility for who you are becoming, you are already closer to wealth than you imagine. Because in the end, what keeps you away from wealth is not the world. It is the level of consciousness you sustain. And that you can change starting right now. The trap of repetition. There is something more dangerous than making a mistake. Making the same mistake for years and calling it destiny. Many people are not far from wealth for lack of a chance, but for an excess of unconscious repetition. They wake up, think the same way, react the same way, decide the same way, and expect different results. Jim Rohn always made it clear, if you don't change, nothing changes. And if nothing changes, nothing improves. The pattern you repeat reveals the level of your consciousness. If you always choose the easiest, the fastest, the most comfortable, then you have already decided, even without realizing it, to stay distant from wealth. Wealth does not grow in emotionally unstable soil. It requires constancy. It requires predictability of character. It requires you to be reliable to yourself. When you promise something to yourself and do not fulfill it, you break an internal agreement. And broken agreements build silent self-sabotage. What keeps you away from wealth might simply be this: you no longer trust yourself. And until you rebuild that trust, the universe does not entrust great responsibilities into your hands. Transformation versus information. Another major block is confusing information with transformation. You read, you watch, you consume content, but you do not execute. Jim Rohn said that learning without acting is intellectual entertainment, and entertainment does not build fortune. Many people know exactly what to do, but they don't do it. And this creates a dangerous illusion of progress. Knowledge that does not turn into action becomes weight. It becomes frustration. It becomes silent self-criticism. Wealth requires imperfect decisions, imperfect actions, but repeated ones. Do not everything. Complete understanding never comes before movement. It comes after. While you wait for absolute clarity, life passes by. While you wait for total security, others build structure. What keeps you away from wealth might be the excessive analysis and the lack of practical commitment. The power of environment. You do not grow alone. You are molded by the environment you accept. Jim Rohn stated that we are the average of the people we spend the most time with. And this is not a pretty phrase. It is a silent law. If you live surrounded by people who normalize scarcity, who mock discipline, who criticize those who grow, then, even if you want to prosper, your environment will be pulling you back. Wealth requires difficult choices. Sometimes, it requires distance. It requires silence. It requires strategic solitude. Not everyone who walks with you deserves to get where you want to go. What keeps you away from wealth might be misplaced loyalty. Loyalty to small stories. Loyalty to old versions of yourself. Loyalty to people who do not want to grow. Environment does not need to be abandoned with anger, but it needs to be overcome with maturity. The price of discipline. A moment comes when consciousness calls. And when it calls, ignoring it becomes expensive. Wealth begins when you decide you will no longer repeat the same year. That you will no longer romanticize scarcity. That you will no longer negotiate with indiscipline. Jim Rohn said that one day you will pay the price of discipline or the price of regret. And regret always costs more. Nothing changes overnight. But everything changes on the day you decide to change. What keeps you away from wealth is not a mystery. It is a set of small choices made without consciousness. And when you bring consciousness to those choices, the game changes. Not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. Wealth is the consequence. Consciousness is the cause. And when the cause changes, the effect has no choice but to follow. Protecting the ego versus expanding destiny. There is something that keeps many people away from wealth, the identity they protect. They say, I am just like this, as if it were a virtue, when in reality it is a prison. Jim Rohn taught that if you want more, you need to become more. And becoming more requires abandoning old labels. While you defend your old identity, you block your next version. Wealth requires internal flexibility. It requires the humility to admit, what brought me here will not take me further. Many people prefer to protect their ego than to expand their destiny. What keeps you away from wealth might be the attachment to the story you tell about yourself. The fear of exposure. Another silent block is the fear of exposure. Wealth amplifies, and everything that amplifies reveals. Some people avoid growing because growing means being observed, questioned, criticized. Jim Rohn said you cannot have the fruits of the forest without dealing with the wild terrain. Whoever flees from judgment also flees from prosperity. The fear of making a mistake in public makes many people choose a small life in silence. But the truth is harsh. No one builds something great while hidden. Vision and standard. Wealth is not born from improvisation. It is born from clear vision, from defined direction, from structured purpose. Jim Rohn always spoke about the importance of knowing where you are going. Those who have no vision accept any path, and those who accept any path arrive anywhere. What keeps you away from wealth might simply be the lack of a compass. You wake up busy, but not directed. Work without vision exhausts. Vision builds. Wealth responds to elevated standards. Standards of behavior. Standards of thought. Standards of decision. When you accept little from yourself, life delivers little. Jim Rohn said you cannot live below your standard and expect results above it. Low standards create weak routines. Weak routines create limited destinies. What keeps you away from wealth might be the level of acceptable that you have normalized. Time governance. Everyone receives the same amount of time, but few know how to govern it. Wealth is, in large part, intelligent management of time and energy. If your day is consumed by distractions, weeks pass without construction, years are lost without structure. Jim Rohn said that time is more valuable than money, Because money can be recovered, time cannot. A point comes where consciousness no longer allows for excuses. Either you change your habits, or you repeat your story. What keeps you away from wealth is not unknown. It is tolerated. And everything that is tolerated perpetuates itself. The final decision: wealth is not a prize. It is an inevitable consequence of internal alignment. When you decide to align yourself, the path opens. Not because life became generous, but because you finally became compatible with it. There comes a moment in life when information is no longer the problem. Consciousness has already been delivered. Understanding has already happened. From that point on, ignorance no longer exists. There is only choice. What keeps you away from wealth is not a lack of capability. It is a lack of alignment between what you know and what you practice. Jim Rohn said that the true tragedy of life is not failing to reach your dreams, but living without enough discipline to honor them. Wealth does not require perfection. It requires commitment. Daily commitment to what you know needs to be done, even when there is no motivation, even when no one sees, even when it is uncomfortable. From now on, every choice carries weight. Every habit builds a destiny. Every concession weakens the future that you say you want to live. Do not expect life to change. It responds. It always responds. When you raise your internal standard, the external world reorganizes itself. When you govern your mind, your reality begins to obey. Wealth does not begin with money. It begins with the silent decision to no longer sabotage yourself. And that decision does not need to be announced. It needs to be lived. In silence. With constancy. With responsibility. Because in the end, life does not reward intentions. It rewards identity. And from today on, the only question that truly matters is, who do you choose to be when no one is watching? The rest is consequence.